10. Thrown out of court. Amanda COURTHOUSE was waiting to hear how long she'd have to spend in prison when suddenly her supporters made a shocking outburst in the courtroom. She was being sentenced for murdering a man named Jerome Zerker, a father of 5. Amanda was wasted in the summer of 2016 and drove her car straight into an SUV, resulting in Jerome's death and severely injuring his fiancée. It was a tragic mishap, a drunk driving fatality that never should have happened. And during sentencing in 2017, it was Amanda's family who acted like fools in the courtroom. The Wayne County Circuit Court judge had to kick 2 members of Amanda's family out of the room after she caught them giggling and snickering. Apparently, they thought the testimonies given by the victims' children were funny and cracked up as if they were in high school class. So, the judge kicked out Amanda's mother, Donna, and held her in criminal contempt. Amanda's mother got arrested at her own daughter's criminal hearing for laughing at the daughter of the man whom her own daughter killed by drunk driving. Now that's a mouthful. She was given 93 days in jail for snickering in court, while her daughter was slapped with 3 to 15 years in prison. However, the mother apologized the next day and had her sentence reduced to only 1 day in jail. Should she have served the full 93 days? 9. Judge dragged out. A former Ohio judge was given 6 months in prison, and she didn't go quietly. First, Tracy Hunter was so shocked that she was being sent to jail that she literally went limp. Then Tracy became rigid as a board and had to be carried out of the courtroom by her armpits, a look of absolute shock and bewilderment apparent on her face. She couldn't believe that she'd actually get 6 months in jail, and it looked like her body had just shut down completely. Hunter had initially been convicted in 2014 and given 6 months. However, the sentence was delayed so that she could appeal. For 5 years, she appealed, and she finally lost it in 2019 and was forced to do her time. The reason she got in trouble in the first place had to do with her brother. According to the Associated Press, Hunter gave her brother confidential information when he came up for a disciplinary hearing regarding his government job. That's all she did. Hunter didn't deal drugs, and she didn't kill anyone. All she did was use her position as a judge to help her brother out of a small jam with work. Yes, there was a conflict of interest, but the judge's life was ruined beyond any reconciliation. She lost her license to practice law, ended up doing 75 days in jail, and was released in October 2019 in shambles. Did her punishment fit the crime? 8. Revenge of the Sons. Dale Williams Sr. pleaded guilty to aggravated murder on July 11, 2019. He admitted to being responsible for the brutal death of 46-year-old Elizabeth Pledger Stewart in an evil and indiscriminate act of violence. It was 2 years prior to the trial, early in the morning on June 15, 2017. Dale Williams chased Elizabeth through the early morning traffic. He ran her off the road, then got out of his vehicle and shot her 5 or 6 times in broad daylight. All because Dale suspected Elizabeth was cheating on him with another man. At the court proceedings, as the deceased woman's 14-year-old daughter was preparing to read her victim impact statement, the woman's 2 other children launched an attack. Her 2 male sons charged the murderer, and they beat him up. Footage of the dramatic assault in the Youngtown courtroom was captured on video by local news. The 2 brothers, Anthony Dees and Jerome Stewart, powered through the barricade of security guards, reached the sicko who'd murdered their mum, and savagely threw down blows until the police could finally haul them away. As much as this might seem like the justice and revenge attack may have been totally warranted, this was still a court of law. Both brothers were arrested and charged with assault, as well as obstructing official business. They were sentenced to 30 days in jail. 7. Punching the judge. A man in Texas attacked a female bailiff in December 2021, then punched the judge. It happened in a courtroom after the defendant was denied a bond at his court hearing in Houston. Joseph Caterino, 58 years old, was charged in 2018 with submitting false financial statements. He'd worked as a pilot up until being fired in 2017 for erratic behavior. Something was happening with Joseph that made him spin out of control, and he was no longer trusted to fly airplanes. He claimed to be a sovereign citizen, that he didn't need to pay taxes, and so he did everything he could following his termination to wriggle out of giving the government money. During court proceedings, Joseph addressed District Judge Danny Lacayo disrespectfully, and so the judge denied Joseph the bond. The judge directed a bailiff to take him into police custody, and that was when he lost his marbles. When the bailiff tried to take him away, Joseph grabbed the woman's hair, knocked her to the ground, and started punching her as hard as he could. He was absolutely wailing on her. It was so brutal that the judge himself came down off the bench to save the bailiff, and it turned into a real rumble. Finally, the bailiff got her stun gun back and was able to hit Joseph with it. But the electricity went through Joseph and shocked the judge as well. It was a total catastrophe, and now Joseph is facing 3 extra counts of assault on a public servant. It's a good thing this lunatic's not piloting planes anymore. 6. Crying in the courtroom. Dino Tomasetti was such a beefcake that when he walked into the Nassau County courtroom in February 2022, he needed 3 sets of handcuffs just to restrain his muscly arms. Dino was in court because he shot his parents on Christmas Day in 2021 inside their Long Island mansion. He was facing charges of attempted murder, assault, and gun possession. The shooting happened at around 10 a.m. on Christmas morning. Dino put a bullet in his mother's head and 1 shot in his dad's back. He was quickly picked up by detectives and arrested. With motive, it was all because the family had gotten into a holiday squabble. They'd argued, the bodybuilder freaked out, and he shot them both and ran away. This was a terrible crime, but thankfully Dino was a poor shot. Both his parents survived, and they were both in the courtroom during the proceedings. When Dino turned back into the audience and looked at his father, and his father shook his head disapprovingly, the great big bodybuilder started to cry. Right there in the courtroom, he bawled like a baby. He was a big man with a gun, but not so big bound in 3 pairs of handcuffs with his father's disapproving stare burning into him across the courtroom. He pleaded not guilty, so the case is still ongoing. 5. The daring escape. Back in 2020, a man named Nicolaus Garrison was found guilty of aggravated possession of meth. He was sentenced to spend 1 year in prison and to pay a fine of $2,500. But just before he was taken away in cuffs, he escaped the courtroom. He fled from the court on foot, making a mad dash for the exit, with several police officers in pursuit. One deputy dove headfirst over a railing to try and grab Garrison as he fled down the stairs. That deputy crashed into a wall and tumbled like a boulder down the staircase. He suffered a concussion and 4 broken ribs. It was just the distraction Nicolaus needed to get away. He got out the front door and made his escape and was gone like the wind. The criminal managed to stay on the run for 3 whole days, but he couldn't run forever. The Highland County Sheriff's Office was tipped off to his whereabouts and arrested him before the week was over. They brought him into custody without incident, and he was brought up on more charges. Nicolaus got an extra 6 years after pleading to 1 count of escape. He could have just done his 6 months quietly and without protest, but he just had to make a break for it. 4. Getting busy in the courthouse. Brittany Lachelle Jones filmed herself performing an extremely inappropriate act upon a man inside the Duval County Courthouse. This was in Florida back in 2017. Then she posted the video on her Twitter account, boasting about how she'd figured out how to get her charges dropped. The police found out about the video, were disgusted by what had taken place in their courthouse, and immediately went to arrest Brittany. She was brought into the Duval County Jail, along with the man who'd been in the video with her. Both Brittany and Jeremiah Robinson were charged with an unnatural or lascivious act. But what in the world was this woman thinking? According to the authorities, Brittany Jones had initially been in the courtroom for an arraignment for a prior arrest involving drug paraphernalia. She pleaded no contest and was given time served. But for some insane reason, she and her friend Jeremiah decided to get a little physical outside of the courtroom doors so Brittany could post the video on her social media. But because it was also captured on the courthouse security camera, she was busted red-handed. 3. Serial car thief. A woman identified as Brandy Lee Jones was scheduled to appear in 2022 at a courthouse in Dublin, California. She'd been arrested for allegedly stealing a vehicle and needed to go to court to have the charges sorted out. But she did so in yet another stolen vehicle when she showed up at the courthouse. The Dublin Police Department had received an alert for a stolen vehicle at about 11 a.m. They located the stolen vehicle in the parking lot of the East County Hall of Justice. It was empty, but clearly someone had driven it there to the courthouse, and so the cops waited. They conducted surveillance on the van and waited for whoever stole it to come back. And that was when Brandy Jones came strolling across the parking lot and got into the driver's seat. The cops immediately rushed in and pulled her out of the vehicle. After a brief discussion, they learned she'd just left the courthouse where she had been summoned for a previous stolen vehicle case. She was arrested right there on the spot, found to have methamphetamine and 2 glass pipes on her person, and was taken to Santa Rita jail. The police department tweeted after, "When making a court appearance after being arrested for stealing a car, don't show up in another stolen car." 2. 6 more years. In Paynesville, Ohio, a man was given 6 extra years in prison for an angry outburst in the courtroom. It happened in March 2019. Manson M. Bryant had previously been found guilty of kidnapping, burglary, robbery, and abduction. During the sentencing, Judge Eugene A. Lucci gave Manson a sentence of 22 years in prison, smashing all his charges into one big crime. Manson was so shocked and furious that his entire life had just vanished before his eyes that he started screaming and shouting. Finally, Manson erupted in a profanity-infused outburst. He called the judge a racist, hurled all kinds of nasty words at him, and had to be dragged forcefully out of the courtroom. But it didn't end there. As you can probably imagine, judges don't really appreciate being abused verbally. So, for all the obscenities yelled, Manson was given an extra 6 years. That means, in the end, he got 28 years in jail total. And while that may seem like a lot, the court records show Manson wasn't just an accidental criminal. He'd committed multiple crimes and was involved in organized criminal activity. He'd done prison time before and had caused massive psychological harm to his victims and severe economic damage. Now he can't cause anyone any more harm, since he's behind bars. 1. A drinking problem. A man in Tyrone, Pennsylvania showed up to court drunk. His name is Lawrence E. Williams, and he arrived at his arraignment at the courthouse at about 11 a.m. visibly intoxicated. Of course, you have to be pretty drunk to be visibly intoxicated, meaning red-eyed, stinky, slurring, and all the rest. Lawrence's drunkenness was outrageous because he was in court on DUI charges, yet he drove himself to the courtroom first thing in the morning drunk as a skunk. According to officers at the scene, the second he entered the courtroom, they could smell alcohol. His eyes were bloodshot and he stank like a brewery. He was in court for a DUI case from April 2022 when he drove his car into a fence. Lawrence had already been on probation following 2 separate DUI cases in 2021 alone. In August that year, he crashed into a mailbox while drunk, and later on in November, he showed up at a sheet store drunk and was stumbling around buying more alcohol. That would make his arrest in the courtroom the 4th DUI total. And you know what they say, 3 strikes, you're out. So Lawrence was arrested, his bail was too high for him to afford, and he was sent to Blair County Prison. I guess that extra strike didn't help him much. Would you rather go to jail for a crime you didn't commit, or someone else go to jail for a crime you committed? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you again soon for another awesome video.